Okay. So welcome to, I guess you say Fortitude Free Nuggets, huh? And so, what I want to bring to you today, y'all, I had a revelation. I had a revelation. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I had a revelation. And let's see, I am live. No, it's not allowing me to do that. Anyway, I was trying to do something. But anyway, y'all, I had a revelation this morning and I've got to share this with you. Got to share this with you. For those of you who do not know me, I am Sharon D. Brown. I am the founder of Self Care You Academy. And with Self Care You Academy, it's for entrepreneurs and for executives, for those of you who are ready to empower. I'm saying to empower, to supercharge your self care so that you can sustain your sanity and thrive under pressure. But the thing is, with Self Care U Academy, Self Care U Academy has Fortitude Free Circle. Fortitude Free Circle is primarily for entrepreneurs, for female entrepreneurs 40 plus. And this is in a circle, in a community where you build your discipline, embrace challenges, and you sustain your resilience. Because, y'all, when it comes to just living, just being human, just without it, it takes effort, it takes work. So we just need to stop thinking about that. And we can tell in some areas where we may not have done the work because it's going to show up. And that doesn't always mean that that's the case. Sometimes it just is because there are just some things that we have not experienced yet. So how can we even know? You know what I mean? But the main thing is it takes work to continue to, it's not just about increasing your capacity, but to at least have it where it's pretty steady. So when things come to be, you are able to pretty much, um, you pretty much are able to, I want to say, again, sustain. You want to be able to sustain everything that comes to you. And like right now, for whatever reason, with technology, y'all, in which it had been doing that this morning. As they say, roll with it, roll with it. Anyway, but that's okay because when technology isn't working the way that you want it to, you pivot, right? And so this is why we have notes, the written notes. That is okay. That is okay. So, if you've seen the name of this, it is what are you enslaved to? Because, like I said, I had a revelation, and I want to make sure I share this with you all because I'm going to be dropping so many gems. Make sure you save this. Make sure you go back and hit replay. And for those of you who are on social media other than YouTube, make sure you go to YouTube. Because you want to put this on replay. Believe me, you're gonna be saying, "Oh my gosh, here, oh my gosh, I thought one that you did before was really good, but this is really good." Because y'all, when I had this revelation, I'm like, this is not just for me. I've got to share this. And so, one thing I'm going to say is by being an entrepreneur, your thought process really does change. You know, once you start getting into a momentum of it's not just about expanding, but it's kind of like how can you show up to the world? How can you offer, it's like, how can I offer my services? And so I had a thought. The thought was, pretty much when it came to actually it came from the Bible, y'all. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Y'all digging that. My thought was, how did the widow sell her oil? And not for any of you who are not familiar with the story, there was a widow in the Bible whose husband died and she had a son. And then during that time, like they had debt. And during that time, when you had debt, you had to sell your children in order to, settle that debt. And she's like, oh no, my children mean too much for me. So she went to the prophet and said, hey, I'm in debt. They're going to take my son. What should I do? And so the prophet was like, what do you have in your house? Y'all, I'm pretty sure you've heard the story before. I've heard the story before so many, ways. And I'm like, oh, because even when I heard it, I'm like, oh yeah. But it really hit different because the thing is, sometimes it's the way that you ask the question for you. Because the resolution can be there, but it's how you ask the question. So this time, because I was motivated when I first heard the story in a certain way, it was probably about a year, I would say in the past 18 months. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. Now, which it always stuck with me, but it did not put out this, it motivated me, but it didn't move me towards momentum as it should. But this is going to move y'all. This is going to move you. This is going to move you. And so when it comes to the story, again, he asks, what do you have in your home? Now, you know the rest of the story of how it goes, okay? We're going to get to that part. But what I'm asking you, because what it made me think of, because again, my question was, well, how did she sell it? Then when I went further, I'm like, ooh, it just had a brand new meaning. Which my question to you is, what are you enslaved to? Because she was enslaved to the debt that was owed. Because the other thing I thought about, it was like, well, even if her children went into enslavement to pay off the debt, will they get out of bondage or not? But the thing is, where other than not being in debt, will she still like have abundance? That was my thought. Because it's like, yeah, she won't be in debt, she won't owe anybody, but will you have abundance? And that is where some of you, some of us can be stuck. That can be where you are. You can be enslaved with something in your life. But let me tell you, first, you got to identify what that is. What are you enslaved with? Are you enslaved in debt, financially? Are you enslaved with your 9-to-5 job? Are you enslaved in a relationship that requires you to go deep, make a decision about, and to move forward with whatever that decision is? What are you enslaved? What has you in bondage? What are you enslaved? What enslaves you? You're a slavery to something. All of us are at some point or another. So that's one. Still trying to get my computer. I don't know what's going on with this thing. But anyway, but that's okay. That is okay. So you're going to see me looking off to the side time to time because of the fact this is how we pivot. So what are you enslaved to? Because again, it can be your 9-to-5, but whatever it is that you are enslaved, that has you enslaved in slavery, you usually succumb to the slavery. Succumb to the 9-to-5, especially if that's not a place where you really need to be when it comes to I don't even want to say your calling, just you, because sometimes it may not be your calling, but it's still in alignment with you. And you can tell, you can tell with your attitude that you have about the job, your body is going to always tell. It's going to always tell you. And so, what are you succumbing to? Because of the fact you can be succumbing to things that are not in alignment with you. You could just be existing. Because when you just are existing, how are you going to be in alignment? Especially for those of us who have a calling. And there's a lot of work that we have to do in order to get to the destination anyway. Because entrepreneurship, having a calling, is all about personal development, about self-development. If you don't know that now, just go ahead and close the door, lock the door, and say, hey, this isn't for me. But life has a way of presenting things that we need to work on anyway. And so, yeah, I'm still trying to. Anyway. So, what are you succumbing to? Because of the fact, and I'm going to say this, because again, when I think about that story, in that whatever it is that has you enslaved, you sometimes become it because you start worrying about it, you start being so concerned about it, and you're focusing more on that than, which the next step I'm going to tell you. And let me say this first, in that if you are not able to identify even what you're succumbing to because you're enslaved, whatever has you enslaved, if you're not able to succumb to that, you're going to remain there. You're going to remain stuck. You're going to remain self-sabotaging. You're going to remain on the sideline. And so there are things that you may need to work on. All of us, whether it's showing up, visibility, reaching out, how do you go about doing all of those things as an entrepreneur? And sometimes, and again, a lot of that stuff comes from us. It's whatever, it's those things that's holding us back. Again, it can be a relationship, it can be your job, it can be you. Most of the time, it's us that have, it's you that have you in bondage. And so, remember, the prophet asked, what do you have in your house? Now, a lot of times when that question can be asked, you're thinking about something tangible. And for some of us who are entrepreneurs, it may not be tangible. It may not be something that you can put your hand on because it's the intellectual property that you have. It's your wisdom. It's your experience. It's your lessons that you've had from experiences. So there was something that had pretty much push you or propel you towards your calling. Because like for me, even though I have been in mental health for so many years, but for me, what propelled me more so into this self-care, even though I wanted like a different way of showing up, a different way of helping people, but my breakup, crying for 40 days and 40 nights, is what propelled me. And by me stepping into a yoga class that helped me through my healing. And so what propelled you? Because usually it's an experience that you may have. And so when it comes to that, what do you have in your house? In other words, what excess do you have? Again, she had the oil. You may have things to sell in your house, but it may be craft, it may be drawing, it may be writing, it may be a journal, it may, whatever those things are. But again, a lot of us, it's our intellect, it's our gifts. It's more so our gifts. Your gifts are your assets. And so when you're thinking about all of those things, don't just think about the tangible, because even quote unquote among the poor, everyone has a gift. It's all about if you believe in your gift. And that's the next one. You believing in your assets. Because what is it said? Your gift will make room for you. But it's not just your gifts in and of itself. Again, your gifts are your assets. Is you believing in your gifts to make room for you. And sometimes some of you need to be pushed. Sometimes something needs to propel you to even identify what those gifts are. But when you identify what those gifts are, you use it. Then what was the other thing in the story? She went on to ask, where the prophet told her that, hey, she said, hey, I got some oil in my house. And he said, hey, go to your neighbors and borrow some vessels. And that's what she did. And so with that, meaning in having collaboration, in asking for help, in seeking counsel, all of this came up today. Gave me a brand new perspective. And so, meaning that even though you may have a natural gift, even though you may, like for some of you, let's say coming out of a relationship, you learn how to navigate that process. And there's so many things regarding a broken heart, but you have that one that helps someone. Like for me, my main thing is about us taking care of ourselves, doing the things that need to be done so that you can be well. Because that's what I've seen and that's what I've experienced. Because if we're not nurturing our nervous system, reconditioning our nervous system, and training our nervous system, we can be enslaved. And then we have all that debt. And I'm going to go back to debt too, because I want to make sure you hear me. Again, debt isn't just financial debt that you may be in if you're enslaved to that thing that's holding you, if you're enslaved to something, but that can be self-doubt. Again, I already said self-sabotaging. It can be low self-esteem. It can be, what's that other thing? Imposter syndrome. So your debt can be really things. It's like, how do you think about yourself? How do you feel about yourself? Your self-concept. The negative thoughts that you're having, that is the debt. So you're like, Sharon, how can I get rid of the debt? You get rid of the debt with your assets. And your gift is your assets. And how you go about, I guess you say, in sharing your asset, in being of service with your asset, and selling your assets. And that's where my question came in. Like, how did she go about doing that? She went into the market. She went into and let people know that she had oil to sell. And so, as I said, whatever your gift is for you to believe. Because if you don't believe even in your own gifts, you're not going to be able to, no one is going to be able to listen to you, or even others may not even think that they have a need for your gifts. And so in saying all of that, to say that when you identify, again, what you're enslaved to, you identify what your debts are, and then you identify your assets. Because your assets is the thing that's going to get you through. But you got to believe in your assets. Because Why should someone believe in the thing that you're selling? Whatever it is, it can be a product, it can be you like baking, it can be, you like, whatever it is for you. Your gifts will make room for you when you make room, for your gifts. You got to make room for your own gifts, because if not, you're going to be in debt. And poverty, and we always hear, poverty isn't just financial, it isn't about money, it's about mindset. And again, poverty is when you're experiencing, all of those self-sabotaging behaviors. Because if anything that keeps us stuck is our own self for the most part. Some of it is information, but a lot of it is how you approach. It can be the procrastination, it can be delayed action, it can be how you're reacting to things. So get anything that you may be lacking, get the help for that. And again, she sought counsel. She sought counsel in the beginning. She said, I don't know how to get out of this debt. So she did identify to the debt. She didn't know what she was enslaved to per se, but she was like, I don't want to be enslaved. I need some help. So she went to the prophet, and then she went out into her community and said, hey, and her kids, she got her kids involved. That's the other thing, to draw people in and to get them involved. And kids are easier sometimes than other family members. But then they didn't want to, they didn't want to be enslaved either. And so when it comes to all of that, like I said, for you to believe in yourself and where that is coming from, and to be able to collaborate with others. She collaborated with others because she borrowed the vessels. And so sometimes it can be a mastermind. Sometimes it can be, again, seeking counsel, seeking a consultation. Sometimes it can be getting into community, being in a circle. But once you don't stay stuck. Once you identify what your gifts is, what your calling is, in that, you got to let other people know that you exist and that they may need it. And of course, during that time, selling oil was a hot thing. So she had a hot market. Because the thing is that, because one of the things that I thought about, yeah, her debt, the financial debt would have been gone, but she still had to have a way to make a living. And that's where some of you may be stuck in. Because it's kind of like, yeah, you may resolve the financial debt because 9 to 5 can do that. And I'm not saying that someone needs to quit their 9 to 5, but what is fulfilling you? And are you working? Not, I don't want to use the word work, but are you living? Are you in alignment? Somewhere in your life need to be in alignment with whatever your calling is, whatever your gift is. Because you're not living in that, you're going to feel it. You are going to feel it. And so you really behold the answer to your problems. And don't be a slave to them. Do not be a slave to your problems. When things get down, again, they say, oh, it's your why. All that I'm going to say is that for everyone, it's different. For some people, it is going to be your why. But I will say sometimes if there's a level of comfort, sometimes for some people that level of comfort can be that much. And then for some of you, you will not go towards your goals, your calling, because there's a level of comfort. And for others, meaning that sometimes you have to hit rock bottom. And for some, it's just a threat. And for some of you, again, it's your why. And for a lot of you, your family, especially if you have children, that's your why, and that's what drives you. But for some, it may not be. For some of you, it could be being enslaved to the 9 to 5, being enslaved in the relationship, being enslaved, I mean, even in financial debt in and of itself, that's a form of enslavement. What are you enslaved? You can be enslaved within yourself, where you may be thinking that, you're not worthy. That's a type of enslavement. And when you have a type of enslavement, there's a type of mentality that comes along with that. And it puts you into certain actions or inactions where you're not able to prosper in life. And so, enlist the help that you need, and that is in seeking counsel. Again, tell others about who you are, because you don't want to be enslaved, but you're the only one who can undo that. You're the only one who can undo that. No one else can do that. And so for the other thing is that when you're not enslaved, it abolishes the debt. And again, the debt can be the negative way that you're thinking about yourself or that you see the world. One thing that I will say that helps you not to be enslaved is to be around people who pretty much not just going to motivate you, but it's going to help you move to keep that momentum. And that's one of the things that we do inside Fortitude Free Circle. And again, Fortitude and Free Circle are for entrepreneurs where you're like, you know what? I got to be honest with myself. I got, that discipline. And you can have discipline. You could be disciplined in some areas, and in some areas you don't. Because there's some areas I'm like, oh, I need help with this. But you still got to do the work. Then you want to embrace challenges. Sometimes challenges can seem like that is hard. You can say challenges can have a very positive, oh yeah, this challenging me and this is good. I love to be challenged. And sometimes be like, whoo. Because sometimes with challenges, it does something to the nervous system. And so you can interpret it as danger. I don't want that. Let me use discernment. But you want to be able to embrace challenges, because in being an entrepreneur, there's certain risks that you take. And if you're not willing to take some risk, it's not just the financial risk per se, but it can just be the risk of the unknown, of uncertainty, that in of itself, the risk of asking someone for the deal, the risk of negotiating, the risk of putting yourself out there. You don't want those things to hold you back, because otherwise you will be enslaved. And one of the ways to kind of remove all of that is to ask yourself that question: what is enslaving you? What's one thing that you feel like that is holding you back? That's what you are a slavery of. And then sit with that so that you can get a revelation. And when it comes to that revelation, you want to be able to reproduce with whatever comes up. That's what I did. I did exactly that. I asked a question, and I was even asking myself, okay, what am I enslaving to? It can be something that you don't want to go back to. If you don't want to go back to certain things in your life, that's a type of enslavement, especially if you do end up going back to it. It can be a certain type of job. It can be a relationship. It can be so many different things. But when you have that revelation, you, again, reproduce that so that you can rest. Now, when I say rest, I'm not talking about sleep, y'all. I'm not talking about sleep here. When I say rest, when you have the revelation and you reproduce what the revelation reveals, you can rest. You can set it aside, because it's no longer being a part of your life where it's holding you back. So, meaning you're resting from being concerned, you're resting from worrying, you're resting from being stuck, you're resting for being on the sideline, you're resting from stalling, you're resting for procrastination because now you're really revved up. And then you do it all over again. And see, and with this, because most of the time there's more than one thing that you're enslaved in. But what's the biggest thing that you're enslaved in? Because you feel like if you can become unstuck with this one thing, that it can really move you and your business. Because again, they're intertwined. It's not just about you having a product or a service, because you can have all of that. But if you're stuck in an area that is pretty much consuming you, overwhelming you, you're going to continue to be stuck. So to become unstuck is to identify what you're enslaved in, identify the debts that enslavement is causing. And again, you're the answer. And so identify your assets. Because y'all, your assets isn't in your physical house. Your assets is within you, because even in your physical house, other than if it's a product that's kind of like already made per se, because even any other product, you still got to make it. So that still comes from inside you. You identify that and sit down, sit back so you can have a revelation. It may come to you in one sitting. Like today, I asked one question: how did the widow with the oil sell her product? And then all of this came up. And because I'm all about sharing so that, you can be on target. Well, not even on target, more so you can be in alignment with your calling. Because if you're not in alignment, to be honest, y'all, you're not going to show up, you're not going to be visible, then you're going to continue to be small. But once you get free from what has had you in bondage, again, you can use this for anything. But I want you to identify the biggest thing that you feel like is a thorn to you. And most of the time it's you. It's something. It's something. It's something. And one last thing before we end, because I talked about your why. And again, and I mentioned it before, but for some of you, your why may not be what's going to push you, that's going to propel you, that's going to cause lots of movement. Looking from the outside, it seemed like that it should, but for everybody, it's just different. Because I know I'm kind of like that way. Just like, just don't, But when I thought about it in this way, it's like, what has me enslaved, or at least in an area I don't want to be enslaved to? Oh, let me get moving. You see what I'm saying? Because you think that certain things will push you, but sometimes they don't. So if you're not being pushed by your why, be pushed by what will have you in slavery. And even for some of you, you could say, well, it's debt. So if debt have you in slavery, then follow the same thing, So again, for some of you who are not inside the circle, these are some of the things that comes up inside the circle. And if anything that I've learned is being in a community, it really helps, because one person can say something and you're like, oh yeah, you can identify with it. And regarding it being an entrepreneur, on the business side, definitely the mastermind. But again, how are you mastering your mind? And this is how you master your mind. So if any of this resonated with you, first of all, I want to hear you in the comments. I want to hear what you got to say because I know I dropped some gems today. I know I dropped some gems today. And so, but for those of you like, you know what? I want to be in a circle. I want to be thinking about things in a certain way because you want to be well. And this is what self-care is. Self-care isn't always the big thing of, it's before you get there. I call it the path. It's the things you got to do to get to your potential. But for those of you who want to join us on Circle, comment Circle so that we can either talk or get you connected because y'all, you can't do this completely by yourself. You really can't. You can't. But anyway, I will see you all next time. Alrighty. Okay, YouTube, we are, even though we have ended, okay, there we go. All right, let's see here.